Okay, so this is from the beginning of the book. It is when Hazel and Gus have just met in a cancer support group, and they're talking to one another and trying to get to know each other by discussing their favorite books. Hazel says, "Even so, I told Augustus, my favorite book is probably An Imperial Affliction," I said. "Does it feature zombies?" he asked. "No," I said. "Stormtroopers?" I shook my head. "It's not that kind of book." He smiled. "I am going to read this terrible book with the boring title that does not contain stormtroopers," he promised, and I immediately felt like I shouldn't have told him about it. Augustus spun around to a stack of books beneath his bedside table. He grabbed a paperback and a pen. As he scribbled an inscription onto the title page, he said, "All I ask in exchange is that you read this brilliant and haunting novelization of my favorite video game." He held up the book, which was called The Price of Dawn. I laughed and took it. Our hands kind of got muddled together in the book handoff, and then he was holding my hand. "Cold," he said, pressing a finger to my pale wrist. "Not cold so much as under-oxygenated," I said. "I love it when you talk medical to me," he said. He stood and pulled me up with him and did not let go of my hand until we reached the stairs. Now what I'm going to do is highlight some of the details that I got from that very short reading, and I'll focus on Hazel first. Okay, if you look at what I highlighted, I highlighted, and I immediately felt like I shouldn't have told him about it. That's a clue from the text, and when I put that together with what I already know, in the past, whenever I've felt like I shouldn't have told someone something, it's usually been something that was important to me, that I then regretted letting out of the bag, because if the person who I told didn't treat that piece of information respectfully, that would have hurt me kind of deeply. And so the inference that I can make about Hazel is that this book is more than just a book to her. This is something really special and important for whatever reason. And now that she's told Gus, it seems like she kind of let something out that she holds dear and is feeling a little bit vulnerable. Now, in a different color, I'm actually going to highlight a detail or two that I get about Gus and see what kind of inferences I can make about him. Okay, so I've highlighted the Gus details in orange. I highlighted where he writes or says stormtroopers, and then later on he smiled. Another detail is when he says, "All I ask in exchange is that you read this brilliant and haunting novelization of my favorite video game." And then a little bit later on, he says, "I love it when you talk medical to me." All of those details make me think of, people who I've known in my life that were really friendly. Almost everything out of their mouths is like a joke, but not in a mean way, more in a playful way. And so I can infer that Gus is a really playful guy. This also reminds me of people that where I've seen people kind of flirting with one another. It reminds me of being flirted with in the past. And so I'm thinking that Gus not only likes Hazel and is being friendly toward her, but that he actually really likes her in a way that's maybe a little bit romantic. So you can see that all kinds of details, whether they're big details or tiny details, like this one or this one, can tell us a lot about characters. And if the author of the book that we are reading is a good author, they tend to only include details that are significant and that show something about the characters. They don't throw in extraneous or unnecessary details just to sort of fatten up their book. And the books that you guys chose, all of those books are pretty high quality and the authors are pretty well known. And so we can count on the fact that most of the details they include about their characters are important in some way. And so you're going to look at your book, read your book, and notice these details. And when you do notice these details, I want you to take a sticky note and put your sticky note on the page and just jot down what your inference is based on the clues that you found in the text and the information or experience that you've already had in your mind, and you kind of add those together. Think about maybe any questions that you might have had in the past reading the book, put it all together, and then draw an inference or make an inference. And jot that down on your sticky note. You can leave the sticky note on your page and then keep reading. Don't let this process stop you from getting ahead in your book. But you do want to make sure that you stop frequently enough that you're keeping track of who these characters are and what they're all about, especially at the beginning of the book. All right, so now you can see how I would have written my sticky notes out. I wrote the first sticky note that I can infer that this book is really important to Hazel and that she's feeling vulnerable having told Gus about it. And my second sticky note focuses on Gus. I wrote, I also see Gus as a pretty friendly person who likes Hazel in a romantic way, not just a platonic way. So when you're doing your independent reading today, just remember that when you make inferences, you use clues from the text and you add those to what you already know or your schema. And then you'll be able to make your inference. Okay? All right, do the best you can.